So as you can see here, I've got something which looks like a bar chart. But one thing which we recognize is that the bars are actually of not the same size. They are different in size. So a histogram is a type of bar chart where the bars can be of different widths, whereas a bar chart itself, all the bars are the same. So that's first of all one of the key features of a histogram. Now look at the starting point of a histogram. Do you recognize this table? Yeah. Group data table. From this point we looked at, from this starting point we looked at finding cumulative frequencies and cumulative frequency graphs, and we looked at drawing frequency polygons. Now they can give you that same table and ask you to draw a histogram as well. All right, so what is different about this table is if you can look at the class width or the class intervals for each of them. Can you see the class intervals? Are they all of the same class intervals? 100 to 130 class interval is width is 30, isn't it? So the difference between the 100 and 130 there, we can call that, or we refer to that as the class width. Okay, I'll write down here difference between highest and lowest value in group is called class width. Very important to understand that. Class width, it seems quite obvious, it's the width of that class, and the class interval, as we've seen before, is referring to that group. So what's the class width for this first one? You can see it's 30 and 20 and so on, and you can see that. And then we've got frequencies along there, and there's a couple of pieces of information missing here. Now this question is asking us to complete the table and the histogram. So we have to use the table to complete the histogram, use the histogram to complete the table. So there's kind of like two-way thing here, okay? So let's see where we would start off with. Now, first thing which I'm going to introduce you to is a definition of something called the frequency density and how we find that. Now, frequency density, and we would add that as a separate column here, frequency density. And whenever you are drawing histograms, you should always draw a frequency density. And the reason for that is just like cumulative frequency, we drew the we had that extra column, and what went along the y-axis was the cumulative frequency. In a histogram, you can see, can you see what's on the y-axis? It's the frequency density. So you cannot plot the frequency. When do we plot the frequency along the y-axis? What graphs? Where do we plot the frequency along the y-axis? Frequency polygon. Cumulative frequency, frequency density, histograms. So how do we find this frequency density? There's a little formula that you've got to know for this. Now the frequency density is equal to frequency divided by class width. Make sure you've got that written down. That formula here, frequency density is equal to frequency divided by the class width. Okay, so if we look at this table, can we work out the frequency density for the first one? Because it's 30, and what's the class width for the first one? 30. I'll write that down here, the class width 30. So 30 divided by 30, frequency density is 1. Can we work it out for the second one? No. Third? No. What about the fourth? Let's write down my class width here is 20. And so my frequency density for this one is going to be 40 divided by 20, 2. Next one, what's the class width here? 30. And so what's my frequency density going to be for this one? 18 divided by 30. Make sure you do it the right way. You can get decimals. It's going to be 0.6 in this case. Now the middle two rows, the second and the third, we don't know any information, but where do you think I'm going to get this information from? The histogram itself. But look at this, there's a bit of a problem here. The histogram doesn't have any scale on the side. So what do you think? Can we add a scale here? We know this is frequency density. Is there a bar drawn for us for which we know the frequency density for? Which small one? First bar, second bar, third bar? The first bar, which has a, what's this interval? What's the class width for this? Or what's the class interval for the first bar? 100 to 130. Do I have frequency density for that group on the table? You can see it's 1, isn't it? So what can I actually put on this graph? What can I write down? 1 where? There. Does that make sense? So what will that enable me to do now? It will enable me to, can I complete the rest of the scale for the histogram? Does the scale change? No. When we have a scale, it's always linear. It follows the same pattern. So if that's 1, this must be 2. And you've got to be accurate with your numbering here. Let me just check. 3. Oh, I actually did that wrong there. 3 should be here. That's 3. 2, 4, 5. 2, 4, 5. That's 4. 2, 4, 5. That's 5. 2, 4, 5. That's 6. Okay, we've got to be very accurate with this. So what can I do now? Now that I've got my scale for the frequency density complete, can I write down some frequency densities for some of these bars? What's the second bar? What group is it? 130 to 150. What's its frequency density? Have a look. Be accurate. Does it go up by 0.1s? It goes up by 0.2s, 4.2. So where can I go and write that down? In the group 130 to 150. Have I got that group? Where does it go? Where will I write it? Frequency? Here? No, because what I read was a frequency density. So that would go there. Do I know the 150 to 160 group? Yeah, I can read off from the graph, can't I? What is it? 6. So I'll go and put that in. 6 is the frequency density. Make sure you put it in the correct column. Mistakes are made where students write it in the wrong place. We found the frequency density, so we put it on the frequency density. So now that I've got my frequency density, I'll write down what my class width are for these two groups because I know them as well. 20 and 10. Can I use this to figure out my frequency? How? Do the inverse, right? So frequency density is found by doing frequency divided by class width. Just rearrange your equation here. If I rearrange it, what would frequency become? Frequency density times class width is equal to the frequency in terms of letters there. I've just rearranged that equation. So what I'm going to do is 20 times 4.2. 84. And then I'm going to do 10 times 6. 60. So then I've completed my table. But have I completed my histogram? No, I need to go and do that. So let's look at the next group. I need to go and complete from 160 to 180. Look at the group from 160 to 180. What's the frequency density? 2. So go there, 160 to 180, and we're going to go to a height of 2, and our bar is going to be, let's be accurate here. Bar is going to go from 160 to 180. Did you see that? And then the next bar goes from 180 to 210. And what's the height of this bar? What's the frequency density? 0.6. So remember each box is 0.2. So I'm going to go up to 0.6, which is 3 boxes. And I need to go all the way to 210, which is here. Okay, make sure you use a ruler. Obviously, I'm doing it on the screen, so it's quite difficult for me to use a ruler here. So there you go. There's the last bar drawn. Now you've completed the table and the frequency and the histogram. That's worth 4 marks.